the people who are more inexperienced, it's do they see success as an option? People buy from people. And I think that's always a critical thing to remember when there's so many competitors and things sometimes look so similar. It's who are they working with? Do they trust that team? Who are they partnering with? And can you build that connection and relationship?
Welcome to the Rethink Revenue podcast, where go-to-market teams and ambitious revenue leaders break down the toughest challenges, winning strategies, and cutting-edge tech, especially AI, that are driving growth. But it's not just about today. This show looks ahead to the future, where AI will redefine what it means to be a GTM leader.
Hi, everybody. Hope all is well with you. I am Arjun, your host, and welcome to the Rethink Revenue podcast. Today, I am super excited to welcome Deven Budgujar to our podcast. Deven is a super seasoned sales leader. He's currently the director of sales at DataRails, where his primary expertise is in sales leadership, and fundamental SaaS and fintech solutions is his domain expertise. He was the VP of sales at Planful, where he grew pretty fast and led the whole team. He was the VP of sales there. And that's where he kind of refined his approach of team collaboration and process alignment. So today we are going to talk to him as a sales leader about what's going to happen in the market, what is happening in the market, some of his tidbits on how he is hiring, the KPIs that he is going to look for, and anything else that comes to mind. With that, let me welcome you to the show, Deven. Thanks a lot for being here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Deven, it's not an easy market to sell to. I'm going to dive right in. What is keeping you up at night as a sales leader in today's world?
Yeah, and I think that question is always the toughest because there's so many things that are keeping you up at night, and there's a surface level stuff. It's the end of quarter, so the team and the quota and deals are, I think, always in sleep, kind of thinking through deals and understanding what's happening and how we're going to get to that target, right? But then I think at a broader sense, just trying to understand from a leadership perspective, how do we scale and grow the team? And one of the things that I think I really try to focus on is helping and making sure that our teams can really focus on doing what they're best at, right? So for us and for the team at DataRails, that's making sure that sellers can focus on selling, right? Solutions consultants can focus on kind of the strategic aspect of the sale and making sure that their demos are up to par, and really letting everyone do what they're best at is something that I think was really key and critical to some of the things that I'm thinking about right now.
Got it. And for context for the listeners, can you tell me about how big is your team and who you sell to? What is the core offering, just so that they can put things into context?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The team right now that I manage is 6 people, right? And then overall, in terms of the amount of sellers we have, it's about 18 to 20 right now, and looking to kind of scale and grow on that front as well. In terms of the offering and who we're selling to the Office of Finance, right? DataRails is a cloud-based FP&A platform, right? That leverages Excel syntax and language to be able to help folks in finance be able to do their planning, reporting, consolidation, close processes a little bit better. And I think some of the things that make it a little bit different is just being able to leverage Excel and some of the models that you're currently using. But just in terms of from a sales perspective, we're selling into directors of finance, VP of finance, CFOs mostly.
At some level, everybody is selling to CFO right now. I'm doing my sales deals, and I am doing multi-threading to multiple people, finally ending up at CFO's desk today. So at some level, all of us are now selling to CFOs. That's it. And your Planful experience, could you also allude a little bit to your Planful experience so that people get a full picture of your background?
Yeah, exactly. So I started at Planful as an SDR. I went from SDR to VP in just under 4 years. And that was a fast, rapid growth, a lot of challenges and learnings and growth along the way. Planful scaled from I helped them kind of double in revenue and size ultimately. The teams when I started as an SDR from when I left, the size as an SDR there was like 6 to 8 people on the team at the time. I think today, or when I left, it was maybe 35 or 40. When I started on the AE team, there was 2 or 3 in the mid-market. Today, there's 3 leaders across different regions with 6 reps per team, right? So it was able to really scale and grow and help push that into the next kind of space. I think for me, in that rapid growth, there was a lot of learning that came along the way, right? So started as an SDR, spent about maybe 12 to 14 months as an SDR before moving up. got the promotion because I was about to leave the organization, and I had accepted another offer, and the CEO had reached out to me and said, "Hey, well, what's going on? What's the other offer?" Right? And then at that point, ultimately said, "Well, what if we promote you and you stay here?" Right? At that
Mhm.
point, he kind of stuck his neck out for me to get promoted into an AE, and I said, "All right, now it's time for me to prove him right." Right? When somebody kind of puts their neck out for you, right, and puts that trust in you and believes in you, it gave me that motivation to go that extra mile and to go further. I always felt that I'd be a better rep than an SDR, right? As an SDR is a very tough job, and it's something that people do. And then for me, it was to get to the next stage, right? And it was like always, how do I get better at this? How do I keep grinding so that I can move to the next place? Did that, ultimately struck a chord as an AE and did very well. In my second quarter, I tied the record for deals closed in a quarter ever at Planful, which was 8 at the time. And then in my third quarter, I closed 15 and kind of shattered that record. And that kind of catalyzed a lot of growth into from there into a senior A and some mentorship from some of the executives and the leadership team there. Ultimately, within that, that then turned into I made it clear that I wanted to kind of move into management. I started by mentoring one individual and kind of helping turn them around a little bit. And then that led to a place I think up into that point, it was constantly me being impatient, salespeople can be, and saying, "Hey, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step?" When I moved into a director role at Planful, it was the CEO who came to me and said, "I think you're ready." And I said, "Okay, let's go, let's go. Let's see how this goes and let's do it." I moved into a director role under my VP where I had 4 people reporting to me at Planful. I was doing that for 6 to 9 months before I got another tap on the shoulder, and they came and said, "Hey, are you ready for your next challenge?" And I said, "I'm just figuring this out, but sure. What do we have in mind? What are we thinking?" Right? And Planful had acquired a marketing planning solution, and they wanted me to take over as the VP head of sales of that side of the business and kind of help build some of the processes out, integrate it with the rest of the organization, and go through things on that front. I looked at that as this is going to be a very tough job, right? It was kind
Mhm.
of like having a being a head of sales at a smaller organization with a lot of support behind me. And so that was great. And I saw it as a great learning opportunity and growth opportunity. I was able to focus on that for a little bit before they kind of helped bring me back into a place where I was managing a team that was split between the mid-market West as well as the marketing solution. So the team was kind of split and I had people on both sides and did that for about 9 to 12 months and was able to by the time that I left Planful, I was managing a little bit of both of those things, and I think I got a great learning experience out of it and was able to learn a lot in a short amount of time.
Got it. I saw that you kind of grew very fast, and I saw that you were a doer early stage, and then you continue to be a doer and then kind of scale fast. So now, in your vantage point, what are the biggest challenges for the sales leaders right now?
Yeah, I think that honestly very much depends, and when I say that, I think about the challenges I was seeing as we were scaling kind of the core business at Planful, and then I'm seeing similar to data rails, right? And when you think about that, the industry for FP&A automation has really boomed and taken off over the past 5 years, right? And when you think about that, when I started in the industry, we would talk to CFOs who were very stagnant and did not want to make any change technologically. And there was a few big players, Oracle, SAP in the space that were the main people, right? And then ultimately, when you look over there was 5 or 6 or 7 main vendors, and now there's probably, I want to say like 40, 50, 60, right?
Mhm.
And when you think about why that's happened, business now is moving faster than ever. When you think about COVID and you think about the bank crises and you think about people working remote and how much things have changed, it's created an environment where for our business and for data rails and for Planful at the time as well, right? An environment that ultimately is tougher to handle in spreadsheets and handle remote and things like that. And so it's exploded a little bit. And I say
Mhm.
that all to say that the challenges that you see there are there's a lot of new innovations, a lot of new companies. How do you keep up with the competitors? How do you continue to innovate within the platforms to make sure that you're up to date, right? When you think about that industry, there's legacy players like I mentioned, Oracle, SAP, that come back from maybe 1990s or even further, right? You have some second generation players, and then you have some third, fourth generation players as well. And so I think within that, there's a little bit of a blueprint sometimes, and you can scale and see what other people have done to grow within that, but it's very competitive. right? So then you're thinking about how do I remain competitive? I understand my industry knowledge and stay on top of that. But when I helped with the marketing planning solution, ultimately, that was a very different challenge, right? And that was a challenge in the sense that the market and the industry there was kind of a green field. And that meant that it's more about how do you convince leaders that they should change a process that CEOs and CMOs have been doing the same way for 40 years, right? If there's only three or four players in the space and that's not seen as a necessity, how do you build that business case to get past approval, right? And so I think it varies quite significantly depending on the industry and the maturity of the industry and what you're looking for. But within all of that, it's always how do I keep up with the current innovations? And that's obviously top of mind for some of the things that you guys do in the podcast and what we're talking about today as well.
I have many follow-up questions, but let me start off with a simple one. So there is multiple levels of issues, right? If you take the go-to-market funnel, there is the pipeline generation, which is obviously you need more at the pipeline at the lead level, then pipeline qualification, then the deal execution. In that piece where a salesperson is actually acting your team, do you care more about the pipeline these days? Do you care about productivity these days, efficiency? I know it's all, but if you were to stack rank,
We're to stack rank pipeline efficiency, and what was the third one that you said?
it's productivity. I guess it's efficiency itself,
Productivity.
but yeah.
Yeah, it's again something that I think you talked about at the beginning about some of the top level KPIs and things that you're focusing on, right? And
Hmm.
and it's always this ebb and flow, right? I always think about with pipeline, it's if there's too much pipeline, which is almost never the case, but if there
Yeah.
is a lot of pipeline, I should say, then AEs will typically not necessarily be happy with the quality of pipeline, right? And so then you try to shrink it, right? And then you think about the funnel and you say, okay, well, let's make meetings more qualified. So we're not going to have as much top level pipeline, but we're going to have better meetings, right? From what I've seen and what in my career is when you then do that, then AEs are like, well, we don't have enough
Enough.
meetings. And
Yeah.
so then you open it back up. And so what I've seen is kind of an ebb and flow that goes back and forth, a natural progression for marketing on that side and sales together. And then I think from a productivity and efficiency, I always think about the top level thing that I'm focusing on is the revenue numbers at the end of the day, right?
Hmm.
And different businesses need to do different things to get there. If it's a more really fast-paced transactional sale and you know how quickly things are going to happen, I think pipeline's more important, right? If it's a more complex sale and you're focusing on things, then I think it's a little bit more about how do I find the right deals that are going to be good for our solution, that are going to be good customers, that are going to create that healthy growth, that are going to make things go beyond just a singular customer. So I don't know if that fully
What's
answers
your,
your question.
yeah, it does. What's your typical pipeline coverage that I'm not specifically asking for data rail, but as a salesperson, as a sales leader, what is a good pipeline coverage that you think you need in 2025?
It's again, every business looks at stage conversion in a different way. And so one business might see a lead as qualified, and another one might see a completely different thing as qualified. And so really when you jump into any business, I think it's about understanding, hey, how are things looking today? Are we speaking the same language? Right?
Correct.
Because there's no one metric that goes everywhere. I think at a broad spectrum, everyone would like to have 2 to 3x pipeline, right? But the question is that 2 to 3x qualified pipeline? Is that 2 to 3x pipeline from the beginning, just like meetings that you're taking? So what is happening in between to turn that into pipeline? And I've seen some different strategies at Data Rails specifically. We do things a little bit differently than other companies in the industry in terms of generating pipeline and have a really strong marketing engine. So our reps are doing everything from an inbound perspective. And that's a little unique. So that has a different set of efficiencies and challenges as well.
So does that mean that your AEs don't hunt? It is all coming inbound, or do you also ask your folks to hunt?
I always say to people when I'm talking to them on interviews, it's an AE's dream to not have to do that, right? But yeah, like I said earlier, big goal for us is to let our sellers focus on what they're best at, and that's selling. And so they are not hunting. We're putting meetings on their calendar every single day.
Yeah, no, that's a best case. Most companies don't have the freedom leverage to do it that way. And that brings me to this question of like you have a team, you have always built teams. What do you look for in salespeople when you're hiring them? Do you always like to go for the experienced folks? If experienced, then how many years? Or is it more like core skills that you look for? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah. It's a tough thing, right? I think salespeople are supposed to sound good and supposed to do well on these conversations. It's what I tell prospects as well when we go through demos and they ask about competitors and everything blends together. I tell them, hey, we're hired to make these things look good, right? It's about what's the right fit for that customer or for that person. And so when I think about how to hire and what are you looking for, I hate to say it depends on everything because I feel like I've said that a lot,
No,
but it's again,
specifically on your thing, you can say, here are the things that I look for. I know that
yeah.
generally it depends on the business for sure.
Yeah, I think like for example for data rails with the amount of meetings and what we're doing, it's a fast moving business, right? You've got a lot happening at all times. At a lot of businesses and people that we talk to, there's AEs who are very good at what they do, who are dealing with 5 to 10 deals at a time, right? And our reps have 40 to 60 deals at a time, right? And so I'm looking for, have you handled that kind of velocity, right? I tell people all the time, you might be the best enterprise rep and have some really strong skills. And that doesn't mean that you can't close a smaller deal, but that may not mean that you can handle the velocity of closing 15 of those, right? And so it's about, hey, have you gone through that experience that's going to translate? And then another thing, like our AEs are doing demos on the first call, right? In terms of doing demos, do you have that experience? Is that something you're going to be comfortable with? But outside of things that are specific to us, right? I think the things that I'm looking for most is that motivation, right? There's always going to be things that we don't know and we don't learn. Every single one of us has come from somewhere where we went into something and we started somewhere where we didn't know it, right? And in that, I think it's there are going to be some people who are more experienced and some people who are the exact perfect fit. The people who are more inexperienced, it's do they see success as an option, right? That's something that I always think about, right? Like when I came up and went through in my growth in my career, it was always like, how do I put in that extra effort to make sure that I am successful, right? I remember forecasting at the beginning of the quarter and thinking about what am I going to hit? And I always just put, and I'm not saying that people should do this, but I always just put my number and then I tried to figure it out. And that meant if I had to prospect, if I had to go do extra things, whatever it was, I was always that was my benchmark, and that's what I was going to do. And I think that that desire to grow, learn, be bought in, and be motivated goes so far. That's one
Got
of the
it.
most important things.
And when once they are in, they obviously take some time to onboard and then they start hitting the field. What are some of the KPIs that you keep track of to make sure that these folks are aligned in the right direction?
Yeah, I think a few things. Again, each different part of the business, like you were talking about, right? So from a pipeline perspective, like what are they qualifying? For us, we're giving them inbound meetings that we're setting on their calendar. So they've got a lot of meetings. Are they qualifying 70% or are they qualifying 20%? More often than not, whoever's at the top of that at 70% is qualifying maybe more, too much, and whoever's at the bottom might be qualifying too little, right? And so then that gives us a coaching point of, hey, well, how do we hone this in? If you're qualifying a lot, how do you prioritize? If you're not qualifying enough, how do we make sure that we're giving every single opportunity it's putting our best foot forward for it? And then I think other metrics to look at are also time to close. Are we like we can see, hey, this is when top AEs are closing within 30 to 45 days. So are you on track with that? And so I think we always try to take the benchmarks from the top performers and then try to apply them, whether that's through the qualification rate, through the win rate. But again, I think I've learned and seen it. Companies just look at it differently. So the competitive win rate one place might be a completely different thing depending on how you qualify and what you look for.
Understood. And you mentioned about pipeline productivity, all of these other things which included, productivity, efficiency, all these pieces. And we are at a place where there is so much AI happening in sales and sales technologies in general. What is your current thought on AI? Are you already on board? Are you looking at it? How are you thinking about addressing some of these challenges with AI?
Yeah, I think it has obviously moved so fast. And I don't know if this is true, right? But I try to think about it when I look at it as a broader whole of AI and the innovation that it's creating. When I look back, I think there was the Industrial Revolution, which lasted I don't know exactly how many years, but maybe 80 to 100 years, let's just say give or take. And then you look at technology and the dot-com boom and all of that,
Mhm.
maybe 20, 30 years, right? Or so that it's been, maybe 30, 40, but it's every single technological innovation seems to get faster and faster, right? And then you think about AI and I wonder, well, if we've made this much progress just understanding the internet and things over the past 30, 40 years, what does that mean? And if we cut that in half, like we've done with some of the other trends, where are we going to be in 10 to 20 years, right? So I think it is progressing really fast. There's a lot of companies that are popping up, a lot of conversations that I'm having with different types of solutions at completely different stages. I've had some people who I've spoken to who are calling me and saying, "Hey, we just want your thought process on this. We want to understand what about this AI agent would apply to you. We're trying to figure out which direction to go." Right. And then I've also had people, of course, trying to call and sell different things about how do we create that efficiency. I think what we're doing right now at Data Rails, AI is a part of our product, right? And so there are things that we're doing and some things that we're coming out with to continue to push that forward. At our company kickoff, our chief technology officer went through the whole history of AI and how it
Mhm.
started and how we got there. And that was really cool and interesting to hear. In terms of how we're leveraging it today, we're trying to use it to automate some of the tasks that are less value add. So for example, and this is another thing that sales reps will love, and I think will change the norm of how things are being done is no sales reps love going into Salesforce and putting in their notes, and it's not their favorite time of the day. And so I think we've put some software in place that we're currently working with and implementing to automate those notes and to be able to take them and put them in a format that not only takes that off their plate, but honestly makes the notes better, right? And then that helps for the solutions consultant, for the implementation team, for myself, because now I can go in and understand without ever having to go bug any reps, I can understand what's happening in this deal. And it's getting weaved throughout, right? I think you can always see what's happening with deals, and you have AI embedded in everything, in Gong and Zoom Info and different solutions, and it's getting more and more impactful. I think we're still at the beginning of it, so we'll see where it all goes, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about it and how we're thinking about it right now.
If you could automate one of the tasks in your day to day with AI, what would that task be?
Well, we just talked about the note taking, and we're very excited about that one. I think that
Perfect.
is great. I think for me, another thing that I think about that is probably out there, and I probably just haven't seen it yet, and even me saying this, selling to revenue leaders and going, someone's going to hear this and be like, but I think just maybe even just like setting next meetings and setting calendars, right? Like I think it is something where you've got to go find and look and make sure things are open and then validate and set that time. And it takes a little bit of time. And so we've done some steps on our side to automate some of those things. But I always think about just trying to find time in our calendars because we're so busy can be very difficult. And so using AI to leverage some of that, which I know it's out there, and I'll probably get some ads after this, but
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Take a look at your LinkedIn once this goes live. I'm sure that a bunch of people are going to hit you up right after this. That's awesome. What's your favorite tool today? Like forget AI and all, maybe it may not be AI, but something that you really like using, maybe use daily, weekly.
I don't really think anything can replace what Gong is doing right now for us, right? I think it's obvious, it's well known. There's a reason they're doing so well, right? And I think we've got some sort of partnership with them as well. But ultimately, it allows me to analyze and go see what's going on with the reps and in the calls. But then also beyond that, categorizing all the information, the emails, the steps that have been taken, allows me to understand what's happening in the business at a much deeper level without taking time away from the reps and them having to explain it to me. Right.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Got it. And you mentioned about the competitors popping up, the world changing. We discussed about all of that. So a lot of the people are upskilling themselves by reading books or listening to podcasts, which I assume you do. A little bit of knowledge intake in some form or fashion. What are your favorites? Books, podcast, any recommendations?
Yeah, I think there's one that I'm reading right now that I should be further in than I am. But How to Win Friends and Influence People has by Dale Carnegie, I think, has been impactful. And it's a book that kind of challenges the way that you think and tries to help make you a better leader, right? So and salesperson, right? I think it challenges you to think about ultimately, hey, when someone is feeling something, rather than getting in their way or objecting to it, try first to understand where they're coming from and relate and be genuine about that. Right. And I think that I've learned a lot as a manager and as a sales rep, and I'm still learning and growing a lot in both of those areas. But I think that that carries a lot of weight, right? And being able to be genuine, people buy from people. And I think that's always a critical thing to remember that in an industry, especially like the one that I'm in, when there's so many competitors and things sometimes look so similar, right? It's who are they working with? Do they trust that team? Who are they partnering with? Right? And can you build that connection and relationship? And can you take that extra time to try and understand who's on the other side and what are they actually looking for, and not just at a basic functionality level, but what's going to make the difference to them and help them feel like they're supported the best, right? I always try to understand how can I be the best partner? And if we're being the best partner to the people that we're talking to, that means really taking the time to understand them and sometimes pausing, right? Like we're moving so fast all the time and through demos and calls and there's so many questions that we're supposed to ask, like dance and go through this and go through that. But sometimes we got to pause and check in and make sure, hey, are we on the same page? Right? Are we talking the same language or not?
Absolutely. Like in the world where software writing is becoming easier and easier thanks to all these AI tools, I think features is not going to differentiate much. There are like 25 companies doing the same thing. How much can you differentiate just on features? A lot of things will boil down to your brand on the marketing side and sales execution on the sales side. That's awesome. And if people want to hear more from you, learn about you, or contact you, what is the best way?
LinkedIn is always probably the best way to kind of get in touch, right? If people want to look me up on LinkedIn, the good thing is there's not too many people with my last name, so it shouldn't be too hard to find, but it might not be the easiest to spell. So if people want to come reach out, obviously LinkedIn. If people are interested in anything else in terms of data rails, obviously you can go to the website and go through all that.
Perfect. Is there anything that you want to add as a piece of advice for sales leaders or upcoming account executives? Anything that you want to add as a closing note?
I think we talked about a lot and we went through a lot, right? I think that one of the things that we just spoke about in terms of being genuine is one of the most important things, right? I think there is a notion sometimes when you think about sales and the way that people think about it that people always say, oh, I don't want to be the used car salesman, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that, right? And I think there are different ways to make sure that you're not doing those things. And I think being genuine, being a partner to whoever you're speaking to, whoever you're working with, is one of the most important things. And then I think really also trying to I think one more thing that I always get and that I'd like to just kind of touch on is people always ask, "Hey, what is your management style?" Right? And you think about that, and it's a question that I've asked and I want to understand. And I think I've learned and I'm learning, right, that each management style is different for every single person, right? So you'll sit down and I'll do the same thing with one rep, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, thank you so much for being there." Right? I'll do the same thing for another rep, and it's, "Hey, I wanted to do that myself." Right? And that's okay. What's most important is helping them be the best version of themselves and learning what they need from you. Right? And so that's something that I think everyone's still working on and still getting better at, and that I think comes as you grow and as you scale. When I first started as a manager, it was I know the way, this is what it is, this is how we're going to do it. And I had to kind of learn from that and understand that everyone's own superpower is their own identity, right? And what they bring to the table. And that might be for one person how they prepare for a call. For another person, it might be being able to really connect and be genuine. And of course, everybody wants to have all of it, but when you are most yourself and unapologetically yourself in these sales cycles and into a sales process, that's when I think you'll do best.
Awesome. If our listeners want to find you and learn more about you or about Data Rails, your company, where should they go?
Yeah, personally, if anybody wants to reach out to me or have any conversations, I love talking to different sales leaders and having those conversations, learning from them myself, but also helping mentor folks throughout different stages of their career. So please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Obviously, like Arjun said, my name's Deven Budgujar. The last name is pretty unique, so hopefully you'll be able to find that. If anybody wants to learn more about data rails, please just go to datarails.com and reach out there and we can set something up.
Awesome. There you go, everybody. Devin, thanks a lot for joining us. It was very insightful. Appreciate the easiness of the conversation and all the sidetracks that we took. Hopefully we can do it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arjun.